Welcome back to GoDoBe EmPowerMe, our space where we're going to learn the how, what, and why of what achievers do to create some amazing outcomes in their lives. I'm Joe Guskowski, your host, your guide, and your coach throughout this journey. Now, before we begin the content for today, there are a couple of housekeeping items that we need to get out of the way first. To start, let's be sure to keep in mind that this is our journey, you and I, and that means that we can stop, pause, take a break at any time that we like. The pace we move at is entirely up to us, to you and I. Next, each of the modules, including today's, is designed to be somewhere around 10 to 25 or so minutes long in duration. Now, there's a reason for that, and that's because the tools and the technology that we use today have really conditioned us to have very short, limited attention spans. We want those small sound bites, the easy answers, and the quick check boxes. Next, starting today and over the next few modules, we will begin to explore some fundamental ideas that we're going to need to know before we can go deeper into the heart of this achievement program. Now, there is one probably pressing housekeeping item that I'm sure has crossed our mind, and that is the answer to the question of how long is all of this going to take? I mean, how long is it going to be before my world changes or you and I reach our goals? Now, the answer to that question really depends entirely on us. Think of it this way. If our goal was to fill a bucket using only drops of water, how long do you think it would take to fill that bucket up? Well, if we added 1 drop of water each day, then it might take us a few years to fill it up. However, if we changed and added 1 drop per minute, it might take us around 6 months or less. Who knows? The point is that it really is up to us. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that goes, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," or in our case, a single drop. Next, as you already know, I've been involved in training and education in the personal development space for over 20 years, where I've trained, coached, and or supported in some way thousands of individuals in hundreds of organizations, large, medium, and small. Now, having this extensive training background should give us confidence that we are not going to waste any time in any of the things that we explore. We're not going to do anything that's irrelevant. Instead, we're going to follow what has worked for countless others, those successful individuals throughout the generations. Let me give you a historical perspective as an example on our approach in this program. You may recall at some point in your past, either in high school, college, or elsewhere, learning about Sir Isaac Newton and his laws of motion. Newton was a brilliant individual who was way ahead of his time. He was asked once as to how it was possible that he was able to see so much farther than those around him, his contemporaries. How was it that he was able to make all the great discoveries that he did? Newton responded with a simple yet very enlightening answer. He said, "If I've been able to see beyond what my contemporaries have, it's only because I was fortunate enough to have stood on the shoulders of the giants who came before me." Now here, he's telling us not to waste our time on stuff that doesn't work. Instead, use what works, build on it, add to it, and run with it. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this program. If we want to reach our goals sooner, then let's learn from those who came before us. Now, our final housekeeping item is a very important one. It is the question of why should you trust or believe anything that I tell you or share with you? I mean, you really don't know me yet. Now, my answer to that question is simple. It is that you shouldn't. Wait a second. Did I just say that you shouldn't trust what I say or what I share with you? Yes, that's correct. And here's why. You see, my job is not really to tell you what you should or shouldn't believe, or what you should or shouldn't do. My role is as your guide. I am the one who's going to share information with you. I am the one who's going to point you in a direction that you might not have considered before. Then it's your job to explore it, to understand it, and to prove it to yourself. In this program, there is no such thing as blind acceptance. If we simply believe what others tell us, then we will not have built a solid foundation for ourselves. And when things get tough or difficult, and they will, there's a very good chance that our confidence will falter or collapse, and we'll simply give up. And neither of us wants that to happen. That's why here in this program, we maintain a healthy skepticism about every idea that we explore. That's how we're going to build our confidence. And this is what gives us the best chance to be successful at creating the best life for ourselves in the shortest amount of time possible. Okay, so now let's continue with today's module, and let's jump right in and start with this idea known as a thought experiment. A thought experiment is a simple tool that will help us better understand our current world. It was used many years ago by the great physicist Albert Einstein to try and simplify to explain difficult, complicated, or important ideas to others. So here's how it works, and here's how we're going to use it. The first thing I want us to do is to think about how old we are right now in this moment. Maybe we're in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, or even 50 plus. It doesn't really matter where we are, whatever that number is, just as long as we have that number in our head. Now let's think about how our life has been over the last few years. In other words, how do we feel about the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years of our life right now? How do we feel about it? So what comes to mind? How have the past few years been? Were they the best years of my life? Or were they the worst years of my life? Or something somewhere in between? Okay, so now let's change gears just a little. Let's imagine that whatever our life has been like over the past few years, that it keeps on going in the same vein, in the same direction that it's currently been going. So now we're going to jump into the future, and we're going to imagine that somehow we've been instantly transported to an older age, and we're now either 80, 90, or 100 years old, somewhere around there. We've now reached the point in our lives just before we transition or pass on to whatever it is that happens when we leave this lifetime. In other words, we're about to leave Earth for good. Now here, in this final moment, let's take a second and think about what our life would be like if it were to keep going in the same direction as it's going today. What would our world be like at that future point? What do you think we might have accomplished, or what we might not have accomplished? Do you think we would have enjoyed it? That our life would be likely filled with health, wealth, and happiness? Or would it be more likely filled with regrets, maybe about chances we never took, words we never said, or things we never did? Now, typically, when I've asked students in my program about their answers to this question, their responses fall somewhere between two extremes. At the one end, or one extreme of life experiences, some would say something like, "Oh, thank God it's over. It was a horrible, miserable experience. I never want this to happen again. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of the suffering. I'm tired of the constant struggles, and I'm just glad to be done with it. Thank God it's over." On the other end, one might say, "Wow, this was the greatest, most amazing adventure I could have ever imagined. I lived, I laughed, I loved, I stayed true to my beliefs, I strived for, and I accomplished all that I could. I did my best every single day." On the one side, we have a life filled with pain, suffering, and regrets. On the other side, we have a life filled with health, wealth, and happiness. Okay, so now it's our turn to really answer that question. If we were at that transition moment in the future, and if our life were to have kept on going the way it's been going over the past few years, what would we likely say about the life that we led? Think about it. Okay, so why does this thought experiment matter at all for us? I mean, how does it help us? Well, it matters to us because unless you have some concrete evidence, some proof that you're willing to share with me that clearly shows that reincarnation exists in this lifetime right now, and if you don't have that proof, then I'm going to have to run with the assumption that we only get one chance through this lifetime, just one. That's it. And because we only get that one chance, then we want to make sure that we make the best choices so we can create the best life that's possible for us right here, right now. Now remember, it doesn't really matter if we're currently in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, or even 50 plus. That's irrelevant because eventually we're all going to get to that transition point, whether it's 80, 90, or 100, or some other number. It doesn't really matter. This is part of our reality, of human existence. And this day arrives for all of us. So what really matters for us now, here in this moment, is what do we want to say about our life when we reach that point? And what are we going to do about that right now so that we make sure we enjoy the kind of life that we really want to have? If we're not going in the right direction now, then we're going to have to make a change. And that's exactly why we're here today, to start to make those changes. What's unfortunate is that most people don't actually realize this, especially when we're younger, in our 20s or 30s, and maybe sometimes even in our 40s. We seem to think that things will randomly happen to us and that we have no control, when in reality, we're here today because of choices and decisions that we made 6 months ago. And if we want to be in a new and different place 6 months from now, then we need to make some new choices right now, here in this moment. So let's go back to our thought experiment and reflect for a moment. Because now's the time for us to consider what we might want to change or what we need to change so that we begin to move in the direction of a future that we really want to enjoy and away from the reality that we really don't want to live in. Okay, take a moment and think more deeply about it. What kind of a world do you want to live in? What would we like to see changed in our world right now? Now, historically, when I've asked students in my program this question of what kind of a world do they really want to live in the future, in the next 30, 40, 50 years, I typically get a mix of responses. Things like, I want to have a little more money, or I want to be a little happier, or I want to be a little healthier, or something else like that. Now, what's quite interesting here is that as I ask them this question, and I get the typical answers that I usually get, there are two things that stand out to me when I look deeper into their eyes. The first thing I notice is that they seem to have this hesitation to dream big, to really go after what's meaningful or important to them. Their dreams, at least the way they describe them to me, are small. Like they really don't know what they want. Like they're really unclear about the kind of future that they would like to experience in their lifetime. The second thing that I noticed was that it was pretty easy to tell that many of them didn't really believe they could actually get to wherever it was that they wanted to go. Now maybe it's because they didn't think they're rich enough, or pretty enough, or fast enough, or smart enough. Or maybe they think they're the wrong shape, the wrong size, the wrong color, the wrong gender, background, age, whatever it is, or some other characteristic that just wasn't right for them to make them successful. It seemed to me that they'd mastered the art of self-sabotage. Now my response when I see these kinds of hesitations and fears was as follows. I would ask the students to take a moment and reflect on a picture, on an image. Take a look at the image on the board behind me and tell me what you see. 99% of the time, I get the same answer. Usually, people say things like, oh, I see an acorn or a seed. That is what most people tend to see. But here's what I see. I see a huge tree giving you shade on a hot summer's day. I see a branch holding a swing for your child to play on. I see a place where you and the people that you love can have a wonderful picnic together. Now think about this for a moment. What is the difference between what most people see and what I just described? Well, most people tend to see what we're going to call the condition, the way things are today, right now, here in this moment in time. They see the out-of-shape body, the failing relationship, the stagnant career, the strained finances. They feel the pain of the moment that they're in right now. It's front and center in their mind all the time. So what's the difference with what I see? Well, I see what we're going to call the potential that exists within this moment right now. I see that no matter what, that if a seed, any seed, is given proper care, nurtured and guided, it will eventually reach its full potential, whatever that is. And that's what I see for all of my students, including you. We're not going to become trapped by the conditions that we may find ourselves in today, whatever they are. Instead, I want us to focus not on where we are, but on where we could be, on our potential. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this program. We're going to learn how to change our lives in a way that fully expresses all of that amazing potential that we each have. So let's take our first step forward today, right now, and start with our first activity. Now, for this and for all future activities, it would be helpful if you had a journal available, a place where we could put down some thoughts, feelings, ideas, and concerns that might occur to us from time to time. You can use a notebook, a binder, loose leaf pages, insert it into that binder, or if you prefer, you can do things electronically. Whatever is comfortable for you, that's fine. So today, let's start by reflecting on this question of why. Why do we want to change our world? Now, think about this. And remember, it doesn't have to be some grand existential reason, and we certainly don't have to justify our answer to anybody else. This is just for you and I. And also keep in mind that for this activity and for all future ones that we do, there are no right answers and no wrong answers. Any reflections that we have are simply designed to help us uncover clues as to what we're all about and maybe even where we really want to go in life. So that's going to be it for today. I want you to take a couple of minutes and do this activity before you start the next module. Before we wrap it up, I also want to remind you that if you haven't already subscribed, please take a moment to do so. That way, you'll be certain to stay up to date on all the future modules as they come out. And here are some final words of wisdom for today. You can't cross the sea by merely standing and staring at the water. That is a quote from Rabindranath Tagore. Maybe it's time to dip our toes in the ocean that waits for us. Until I see you next time, have an absolutely amazing day. See you very, very soon.